That was a nice Jedi question. That was impressive. You didn't do the hand wave. You got to do the. Did you do it for him?
So tonight's chat is going to be about workspaces. So we've been doing some developer stuff, and now we're going to flip over and start talking about a little bit about the infrastructure side of it. Ray is a good buddy of mine who has been in the VDI space since before some of us have even been breathing. So wait, can I say that?
You can, yeah, you can. It just it makes me cringe a little bit. But.
So I was asking him the other night, wouldn't it be cool to do a thing on workspaces? Like, yeah, totally, let's do this. So without further ado, workspaces with Ray. Sounds like a kitchen. That's awesome.
So I ruined my own joke, and I was going to ask who had heard of Amazon, and then you would have all looked at me like I'm crazy. But what's fascinating is I don't think anybody understands that they have been building and selling a desktop cloud option within AWS that is called Workspaces. How many people knew Workspaces existed? Okay, so a few of you. So tonight's talk isn't, I don't want you to think I'm this Workspaces expert. What I'm an expert in is helping Amazon to understand the differences between selling workspaces and implementing workspaces. And there's a number of things that go bump in the night around that process. So we're gonna divide this up into two things. I'm gonna give you some slides that I have from Amazon that will help us understand what's happening as they're trying to sell workspaces, and then the end of the presentation is gonna be, because I've got about 200 slides, so hope you're ready to go. It's a dumb joke.
We're going until 10, in case anybody didn't know.
So the last half of the presentation, yeah, the last half of the presentation is going to be on those bump in the night things and how I am helping them solve real world customer-based problems. So we thought that would be beneficial for you guys to see as you're exploring and what to avoid, what not to avoid, that type of thing. So this is one of those slides that fascinates me, and it should look really similar for you guys as you're thinking about, how many people are doing VDI? Okay, we got one hand up. So, okay, two hands up. So you've at least heard of VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. I was at VMware for years, and it was always the joke that they just thought, I'm an application guy. I was with VMware, I was one of the global ThinApp leads, application virtualization, and I'd always fight for dance space on the dance floor because VMware kept saying, oh, it's all about big fat desktops that are just virtual. Well, what makes me laugh is that this slide screams what VMware kept saying for years, right? And these are the pillars of what customers theoretically would want out of VDI. Now they've just spun it to cloud. But the main difference you're going to see is that if you pull that one constant that is infrastructure, that is hardware, out of that equation, this actually becomes a lot more easy to scale because it's a series of mouse clicks as opposed to, I got to wait 6 months to appropriate the server, burn it in, start installing stuff, testing, blah, 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 human error, all that stuff. So these kinds of things are what Amazon is pushing from a platform, but this is not different than what you're going to see across a lot of these conversations. Actually, let me take a step back. How many people have interest in desktop at all? Because I'll start fast forwarding through some of these slides if you guys have zero interest in desktop. So that, okay, so okay, so that at least gives me, I'm not going to hard press on some of these points. I'll just skip to the conceptual architecture of it. So you guys get this. This is not foreign to you guys. Closest you're going to get to a sales pitch marketing slide from me. What they've done is they have, actually these two just came out just recently. So Workmail is their email equivalent. WorkDocs is actually fascinating. That's their Dropbox equivalent. So as you log into Workspace, you get, I think it's something like 60 gig of storage allotted to you on S3, where your data and my documents could essentially be synced back and forth, whatever workspace you log into. It's pretty slick. Then as far as desktop and apps, this is where the core platform sits. Workspaces, presenting that, for lack of a better word, desktop that scales with you. WAM is actually Windows Application Manager. I wish you weren't recording this, but I'm just going to say it anyways. WAM, for lack of a better word, is dead. They've struggled mightily with this, where it is basically this console that the intention was to be an application portal for AWS Workspaces admins to feed applications into it and then deploy applications from it. And the whole workflow is just broken, and they're pausing it, but I have to leave it there because it's their slide.
So what's the equivalent of that in, more common? Is that like a Citrix kind of thing?
Yeah, the App Store is another phrase that gets thrown around a lot.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, well, what's funny is because these are their slides, what they've done is gone a completely separate route, and you're going to start hearing things. You're going to start hearing about AppStream, which is a whole other platform that who's used ThinApp before? Okay, so obviously YouTube, but ThinApp is from Citrix, where you're hosting and publishing applications from. So Zen Desktop is here publishing full desktops. ThinApp publishes just the application. AppStream is that equivalent, which what's funny is they didn't realize they were building a ThinApp replacement when they started building it, until one of the PMs was like, hey, this seems an awful lot like ThinApp. Apparently our customers really want that. This might be cool. And then they just beelined into, hey, wow, look, we have a ThinApp kind of thing. So what I'm excited about is, at a basic level, they have achieved, in my opinion, and Chris alluded to it, I cut my teeth at VMware, and I watched VMware spend the better part of 7 years renaming it every year, from VDI 1.0, VDM 1.0 to View 1.0, and so on and so forth, to Horizon, or whatever version it is now. So that was 7 to 8 years of pain, and they've achieved this in, keep me honest, like 2-3 years, if that. And they're already at a point where it's competitive. And because they have name recognition, it's becoming a thing. And as I was telling the other guy, they don't advertise. That's the part that scared me as well. They don't advertise this. So you're talking to somebody, oh yeah, I'm thinking about AWS, and immediately everyone goes, oh, the website. Oh, that's where I buy my laundry detergent. And I'm like, oh my God, this is how big it is. So that gives you an idea of what's happening from a product perspective. So now let's dive into some of the logistics. And this is a marketing slide, but I'm going to use it as not a marketing slide. These are all things that everybody cares about. And what I'm excited about is they're achieving this for the most part, right? My favorite one that I never thought I'd be saying publicly is pay as you go, right? Like, if you think about your bosses or you individually when you're setting up infrastructure and you're buying, and that's a whole 6-month process of buying the server, like SQL clusters, for example. Like, I just remember that being the biggest pain in the neck, because the minute you realized, oh crap, now I gotta do this, it's this 6 to 8 month process of, okay, I gotta buy the server, I gotta buy the cows, I gotta put it in the rack, I gotta do all this stuff. Honestly, like 12 mouse clicks and you have the equivalent of a data center, and you're just, the joke that they use all the time, which is mostly believable, which I'll get into in a little bit, is you swipe a credit card and you're up and running. And that to me was, when that moment actually happened, not only for us as we were starting to partner with them, but listening to customers that are just, yep, no joke. I swiped a credit card, entered some information, waited 30 minutes, and my data center is now living in the Amazon cloud, which, let that sink in for a second. That's an intense kind of moment. And I worked at Liberty Mutual installing, racking 2,000 servers and then shipping the rest of those to offices across the country. My hands started shaking when I was listening to these solution architects talk about, how easy it is to swipe a credit card and essentially go. So secure is another important one. Simplified management. This one, I think logging in and configuring this stuff, you almost can't not have it be more simple, because you're managing this stuff from, and that's their bread and butter. The interface is pretty clean. The management of it is pretty clean. Scale consistently, that's the part that people take for granted. The ability to just swipe a credit card again, and now you have a different tiered desktop, which I'll get into in a second. So imagine your IT, and you I'm showing how gray my hair is, but we had to buy, let's say, 1,000 laptops. You had to pick the make, you had to pick the model, you make a decision, you've now drawn a line in the sand, the laptops show up, you configure them, and that's your footprint for the next 3 years. What if there was a way that you could pick the laptop, but you could change the make, model, like on the fly? And that's literally what they have now with these workspaces. They have a series of bundles. Monday, you decide, oh, well, I want a performance bundle. Switch. Tuesday, oh, I want a standard bundle for this user. Switch. It's pretty intense. Now, there's a few caveats to that, but the concept is clean as far as switching back and forth for something as crazy as that actually desktop. Any questions so far before I start getting too far ahead? Awesome.
Can I get a Mac?
Say that again?
Can I get a Mac?
The-
Apple? iOS?
Not yet, but they are
Or 6, I should say.
they are aggressively going after Linux as well. So I suspect that Linux will be on their roadmap.
So it's only Windows right now?
It is only Windows right now, but like I said, I don't think, you haven't heard about iOS yet. I can't imagine iOS would be in it anytime soon, but closest I can get
I don't think
through.
Apple allows Vertex to be virtualized,
Right.
yeah.
So Linux.
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 And does it support cloud formation?
Cloud formation. Correct me if I refresh my memory what that is.
It's infrastructure as a code?
I'm just gonna guess yes.
Like Terraform? Yes. I mean, Amazon cloud
Yep.
formation.
Considering I've barely heard that term before, let's take it away as an action item, and I'll get it.
Can I script it? Like, can I script
Oh,
the
absolutely.
configuration?
Chris was actually alluding to using Lambda to turn off and turn stuff back on from within the workspaces. So there's a lot of scripting involved. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, console access that you can turn off and turn on.
I see.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Again, this is a marketing slide, but from a in the trenches, dealing with their customers right now, I would say that temporary workers, mobile workers, BYOD a little bit, and then mergers and acquisitions are the 4 that I have seen extensively across their biggest customers. And they're succeeding at this. Meaning, Tuesday you buy a company and you can swipe a credit card and have 1,000 workspaces up and running. We'll get into some of the ramifications of that in a little bit, but the basic concept of swiping a credit card and having workspaces deployed in, say, a day or so for 1,000 users, that's real right now. And if you take anything away from this presentation, Workspaces is real, it is working at a basic level, and it has a future and it has legs. So that's one of the things that sort of, having come from VMware with its ups and downs from a cloud perspective, this is real and it is legit. And it's not just Amazon throwing a name on it. This thing has legs. It's real.
So those are all Windows machines right now?
Correct. Windows is the primary footprint at this point. Linux is on the roadmap. That I have seen, but definitely I think we're all in agreement. iOS is not.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure you're gonna see any virtualization of the Mac OS
Right.
anytime soon, but when I looked at this, I'm familiar with this offering but I haven't looked at it in probably 8 months.
Yep.
It was only, the only Windows offering was Windows 7. We were struggling to get AWS to provide Windows 10, and while we had a few options for, the type of workspace, you get, we're actually interested in developer desktops, so we wanted some really beefy machines, and
Yep.
to kind of run some, I'm from the mutual too, we had some big ass IDEs and tools we were using, and even the larger version of the workspace wasn't big enough, we wanted them bigger, so we had, negotiating with AWS to provide that. Meantime, we're doing it ourselves, with VMware. Is it still, so my question, is it still just Windows 7?
No,
Is
they've
it
gone
10?
full crazy on Windows 10. Well, my answer is this, and I was going to save this towards the end, or towards the middle when I talked about the caveats, but there's two flavors, and then a number, so the term bundle is something you're going to hear me throw out a lot today, where bundle equals a tier that you can buy that is, and I think the tiers, they're adding 4 new tiers just in the next 3 to 4 months. So by end of year, they're going to have 7 total.
Like the EC offerings then, so you're going to be able to, it's not just this or that, you get something.
Right, like caliber of desktop, let's say. So standard, value, performance, graphics, and then there's 4 new ones that are coming online, and the intention is that they then retire the lowest ones and just move everybody up. So so there's that. The next aspect is this swipe a credit card concept. Basically that gets you a skimmed Server 2016 that looks like Windows 10. And you then add whatever you want to it. The biggest challenge they have now is that customers don't want to do that because of, and here's where it gets goofy, Windows licensing comes in, so a lot of people do the second part to this, which is the BYOL, or bring your own license. And that's where some of the challenges I'm going to talk about later on come in, but the concept is clean from swipe. Actually, the threshold I will say is typically 100 seats and below is that swipe a credit card model, and 101 and above, which a lot of the enterprises go to, is this BYOL concept. So it would not surprise me that you could find a tier that would support your developer desktops now, because they heard that loud and clear, and they're adding tiers like crazy. It's almost hard to keep up because just when I think I know which tiers are which, they add 3 more. They've added 2 in the last, and I don't know what the number is. It's crazy.
Can you configure your own custom images when you bring up those machines? You can just...
Yeah, so the BYOL concept is you customize your own image, you hand it to Amazon, they embed it in the workspace, and then so I will not be showing you the Workspaces console tonight, because that is, one, I don't have access to it, 2, it's a bit more advanced, and we can maybe go into another session another day for that. But that's where you would select your image that's in the drop-down console that they have injected in. And I also have heard a term that they certify it, but it's your image, and you do what you want to with it once, and you manage those workspaces how you would in your regular infrastructure. They're just providing you the mechanism to do it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Awesome. So,
Hey Ray, one other question. So when you're talking about the tiers, are there GPU-heavy options available here?
Yeah.
Because I know, when I go to these machine learning, big data, they're basically saying before you had things like AWS, this wasn't attainable by most customers because they couldn't afford, this large GPU-specific machines.
Yep.
So is it through Workspaces, or is that more down an AMI path?
nope, it's through Workspaces. So they just, and I thought I said it, but maybe I blacked out for a second. So standard, value, performance, graphics, and which in my consideration, I think what they've said is that's their GPU heavy
Yeah, that makes sense.
desktop, and then there's 3 more past that. I don't know the names of them, it's just, I would visualize, when they told me that they're phasing out the standard and value as fast as they add, that means they have heard loud and clear that customers, which I'll get into in a little bit, but customers don't like that one CPU kind of mentality. So if you can quickly, they're gonna want more, right? And one of the concerns, one of the problems I've seen is that, oh, on paper, standard seems like a great idea. And they swipe a credit card and yeah, everybody gets standard. And then every user just blows past it because they let the users just run amok and install whatever they want, and which I'll get into in a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is how they're pitching it, but personally, mobile workers coming from India or all over the world is definitely the top use case. Temporary workers, BYOD, and M&A is definitely something that I've seen a lot of traffic around with AWS customers. So.
Okay, I mean, so I'm really familiar with this from, I work for Liberty Mutual, and I didn't get signed off to talk about Liberty Mutual, but I'm going to anyway. I'm not presenting anything, but.
We don't know who Liberty Mutual is, so
Yeah,
just
I know you work there.
Just start.
Yeah, you
start.
did it.
Tell me when you're done.
Yes. So we've been doing this, internally for a while. So we've got an internal cloud that, just before AWS was a really big thing, we've been doing it just for development. We had VDI as well, but I don't want to know much about that. And we actually approached AWS. That's why I'm talking about. We want to get some of these things. Our guys are doing it. They aren't doing a great job managing the hardware that these things are running on, and we're using some tools that are just resource hogs. So we approached them too, and that's when we got into the conversation about we need bigger machines. This isn't going to work. We have to keep doing it ourselves because we need bigger and bigger machines. And at the time, AWS didn't have them, so it's great to know that they do now. So we'll probably reopen that.
Yeah, just as and this is. I'm excited to tell you that when you ask them a question, because I was the guy at VMware that was this ninja mercenary / ThinApp guru traveling the globe, and I had direct access to PMs and developers and all this stuff. And I'd meet with the biggest companies in the world, and they'd say, I want this, and I'd go to the developer, and then it would just go into this black hole of VMware developers, and it would take 2 years, if ever, to get done. I have had customers ask for something, and 3 months later, it's in the product.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's not me selling. That's just I was shocked when I'm sitting in one of their roadmap sessions and I see something, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're putting this in," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah."
Pull
And
the other one.
3 months later, 4 months later, it's like, "Yep, here it is."
So we had this. This is just a use case, right? We had the situation. We had 700 maybe more developers in India working for us, different parts of the company. And we used to, initially we were sending them laptops because we wanted access to our network and stuff like that. And when we started doing this internally, we basically said, it's going to be a BYOD. We're using Citrix. Citrix receiver.
Yeah, that's right.
So they'll access the VM. It's a VM running in Portsmouth though, which kind of sucks, frankly, because they're in. But the idea was that eventually roll up to change that, and just to have these guys connected up with Singapore, which at the time was relatively new. Singapore, or we have a huge development shop in Belfast, Ireland, and have them work with the region, one of the regions up there. So, but it really worked well. We got out of the habit of having to provide laptops. Even when people come in, they can bring their own laptops, and we have them VPN in and connect to a VM we have running. So all the hardware is off the table, and that was thousands of dollars and a lot of work, frankly. So to reiterate what you're saying, it's a huge benefit.
Yeah,
you have to deal with it yourself.
I think what I'll say is I'm excited where it's going, and I think they're backing it up with success stories. And there's some bumps, but I mean, for personally watching VMware and Citrix go through some peaks and valleys, for them to do this in 3 years, I'm pretty impressed. So it's definitely it's not going anywhere. let's leave it at that. This is an eye chart. I get headaches when I look at it, so I just wanted to leave this here so that you understood a little bit about what's happening, where you're coming from, where you're going, and a little bit about, and we'll give you these slides, right? I mean, this isn't, Chris? We're giving them these slides, is that
Yes.
the?
Yeah,
Okay. So, there's actually there's two things. There's coming from on-prem, there's coming from standard internet. They're both basically the same, as you can see, but customer environment, you're setting up what's called as direct connect, or you're getting a VPC from Amazon, so this is your customer environment. They have what's called an AD connector that would essentially talk directly to your Active Directory controller. They tried to get rid of that for a little while, and it became kind of a nightmare as customers would have their AD controller in Austin, and somebody from Singapore is literally trying to connect in, and they wouldn't understand why there's 150, 200 millisecond latency from AD queries, which really started to slow things down. Basic Windows stuff was starting to trip them up. So they've added AD connectors that live directly in your cloud. So user coming in, this fascinated me. There's actually two connections happening at the same time from your client, the Workspaces client, hitting an auth session gateway, but also a streaming gateway that essentially is doing two tasks at once. One from a networking perspective, two from getting into the workspace. So I think they haven't admitted this yet, but I believe the streaming gateway is for app stream that's coming, so that you could, there's always a fail-safe from a connectivity perspective to get into the workspace and actually be functional, which is fascinating. But to me, I'm still trying to learn this, so if you have questions, you can ask, but I may pass out, because it is fascinating and daunting from a management perspective. Strike that. It's daunting to me. That is the only challenge you're going to see, because a lot of this is just click, 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 and you're good to go. But this is what it looks like behind the scenes that nobody ever really sees. Does that make sense? Okay.
And on client side, it's a web browser?
Yes.
So here,
No.
accessing everything through the website?
You've got two options. There is an Amazon Workspaces client install that would be on the client, and I believe there's also a web interface that you can log into as well. So I think it's two. And that client can be installed basically on anything. So back to your Mac question, your OS X question, you can have a Workspaces client on OS X without any hesitation. So really you can access these from anywhere. That's not the problem, but the operating system that is Workspaces for now is just Windows.
In the PC over IP, it's authentication protocol, or it's like RDP?
PC over IP, actually, that is, if you go back to your VMware days, and feel free to keep me honest at this point, PC over IP is a protocol that is separate from RDP. It's a display protocol that Teradici created that allows you to carve it up into different highways, unlike the way it's been explained to me and the way I visually is RDP is one single protocol for display or remote control, whereas PC over IP is cutting up that highway into 6 or 7 lanes. And there's an audio channel, and you can tweak and bend and twist these performance capabilities based on pixel density of the image that's coming across. Build to lossless is a term they use a lot, where you can set a GPO setting that says, I don't care if this user doesn't really need the thickest, cleanest image, so I can set build to lossless down to 60%. I'm actually doing this better than I thought I would. It's been a little while since I did this.
I would say you're doing fine.
So you can set that build to lossless down at a 60% level, and the streaming to the user, the experience of the user will increase, because their eye doesn't need to be doing So if you were to bend that to 100%, you would need a lot bigger pipe, but that would be in a hospital doing, examining MRI documents in that workspace.
One more question.
No problem.
It's about AD connector. So Active Directory is being used only for authentication. It's not taking advantage of group policies or something.
Correct. The AD connector is basically just a middleman to get you to, now, they don't publicly say this, but one thing they would rather have you do is move, and I'm actually kind of surprised it's not on this slide. Just give me a second. No, it's not on the slide at all. So one thing that they have been doing lately is to actually make this in here, so that not only is it AD connector, but there's also a domain controller in the cloud. Because this is not considered in the cloud, this is considered on your corporate network. Whereas conceptually, that's all you need. But once you get into the real world, once you get into the weeds, then having that domain controller there, you're absolutely, because Windows wants, under that 16 millisecond or whatever it is, millisecond response times to AD, or else things start to get a little goofy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but there's no you're not using the groups. All people have the right, even rights, right? There's no any difference here, right?
Yep.
There's
At this
no
point,
groups, no group policies, just connection.
well, at this point, it's this is why Amazon kind of hands off at this point. So however you're currently managing AD is how you're going to manage AD in workspaces. So if you use a lot of group policies, if you have a lot of groups, if you have a lot of OUs, however you do that, and this is one of those gotchas that's down the road is, and we were laughing about this the other day, the bad ideas you had previously aren't going to become great ideas just because it's Amazon, just because it's workspaces.
All right.
So,
Okay.
so there is some, and that line came directly from the solution architects that kind of shrug their shoulders and say, okay, look, I'm not going to fight you on having your domain controller in Austin and your users in India trying to access all the way back to Austin to get authenticated to groups and files and folders and whatnot. So, make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. So I left this here just to give you an idea of footprint. This correlates to their data centers across the planet at this point, and I believe they're expanding this. Please don't ask me where, because they wouldn't tell me otherwise, but these correlate to the drop-down menus inside of the AWS portal, where US 1 West, US 1 East, and I forget what, but you get the idea. They're, your users are not automatically tied to a US-based footprint. They can follow the sun as far as workspaces coverage for you. That's probably the easiest way to explain. Does that make sense? So summary. Fast, secure. I'll let you tell me otherwise. Do you believe me now when I talk about these things? Because I'm not here to sell you anything. I would say that these things are real. It literally does lower complexity cost and provides agility. These aren't just marketing slogans. These things actually do happen on a number of levels. So that's what excites me, is that this isn't just, you've all sat through these presentations where the sales guy or somebody's up there saying, oh yeah, I'll reduce paper towel consumption by 158%. And you're like, what did you just say? Like, what? It makes no sense to me. Whereas this stuff it literally is a couple of mouse clicks and you're up and running, and you can scale this stuff. So that to me is, if you take anything away from this presentation, this slide is real, and it actually is working.
Is it?
How does, Sorry, real quick. So how does pricing work in this work? Is it CPU time? Is this thing off when I'm logged off? I mean,
Literally, it's the sky's the limit, and you can customize it however you want. I know way too much about this, and some of it's classified because the customers are having.
well, so let me follow up on just that
Sure,
point.
got it.
Okay. So is it like EC2 that there are multiple ways to?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Let's put it this way. My company now has our software in what's called Marketplace. So that when you're buying this, and this isn't me selling, this is just the nightmare that we had to go through to get this done. And it's answering your question.
You know we're recording, right? You say that?
No, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Well, he asked for real world, so I'm just giving you real world.
And
So,
that's what we want. We want to see the lump sum. It's not just
Yeah.
the marketing slides.
but again, it was goofy, but it's awesome goofy at the end. It was a little overwhelming to see how many types of options they have. I mean, you can pay by the hour, you can pay by the minute, you can pay by the month. You can, if you leave it up, you're incurring credits. You know, there's all kinds of things that are happening. They can set it so that the minute you log off, it powers off the workspace, right? Which, depending upon whether you go bring your own license or that swipe a credit card, you know, there's all kinds of nuances there. Where, because most enterprises that are buying this, they're treating it like a regular desktop, and they're like, oh yeah, it's up all the time. And the first couple of customers I started dealing with that were angry are like, wow, we just got a bill for like $70 million, and I don't understand why. And I'm like, oh my God, because you left it on, and you left it.
But every organization can set their own policy, right? On
Absolutely.
how things time out.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And AWS support,
Yeah.
from my opinion, is very helpful and receptive, and as long as you've clicked all the right buttons up front, then you know you're good to go.
I like the voice that you use for the account. I think that was good. That was nice.
But there's always some portion of, there's always a cost associated with workspaces because of the storage component.
Yep.
So as soon as you say I want X number of workspaces, regardless of what size you want,
Yep.
there is always something added to your bill.
I would agree with that without any hesitation. But what's funny is that you always have to go back to what would have happened otherwise. Buying that laptop, buying that server.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I agree with you, and now it's just a different kind of trade-off, which
Right.
observing how customers are reacting to this at scale, the opportunity cost of making 2 mouse clicks and making the user pain go away is very intriguing to a lot of enterprises.
And if you're not taking advantage of the cost optimization capabilities of turning the boxes, I mean, yeah, if you have an EBS volume, you'll get charged for it, but a cold EBS volume costs a lot less than a hot EBS volume,
True.
which costs a lot less than having a box up 24/7. So if you have all your boxes turn on at 8 a.m., turn off at 5 p.m., that's 65% less than having them on 24/7.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and visualize what he just said. You can turn on the boxes at 8 a.m. using scripting and using the magic that is AWS Workspaces, and turn them off at 5 p.m. Like, let that sink in for a second. Like, try going to your IT guy in the data center and be like, turn off everybody's laptop today at 5 p.m. and he's going to laugh you out of the bill. He's going to just, yeah, I don't know what that. So it's a whole new world, and it's extremely fascinating at this point. All right. So any other questions? Because then we're going to transition quickly into some of the gotchas and
It's
how.
not in free tier, right? It's not included in free tier.
No, Workspaces is not included on free tier.
Correct. Yeah, free tier meaning AWS free tier.
Yeah, the 12
Yeah, it's
months
just here.
of hours of free tier.
You know what's funny though? I heard something that you can sort of get access to it, but I don't. That's above my pay grade. I don't. It wouldn't. Let's just go with it.
You can turn on the T2 Micro with the free tier that gives you a window using a Windows AMI, but you cannot turn on a Workspaces box.
Yep.
Okay.
A pure Workspaces box using the free tier.
Okay, good.
What do you say?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Because if you think about it, that makes sense, right? Because workspaces are more targeting organizations.
Yeah,
They
true.
don't want to give you
I
a free
agree.
laptop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should have just had it.
What's it do? All right, so no other questions, because now we're going to transition into the fun that I've been having for the last 8 months.
Yay. Stop it.
All right. So, as I alluded to earlier, selling workspaces versus implementing workspaces is interesting, where everything I just said to you is true. It's just this BYOL thing is kind of turning this scenario on its head, because customers are going to do what they have, for whatever reason, customers just want to manage it how they've been managing it, deploy the OS, like antivirus. We're just going to use the same antivirus and treat it the same way and have the same cycles and have, blah, 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 blah. So that has become, and Amazon hasn't fought them on that yet. The solution architects work really hard to stand in front of the customers and say, you really need to consider these 15 things as you're building these images. And up until just recently, the customers have said, no, we're good. Yeah, we're good. And the solution architects just kind of be like, okay, I'll just be over here, and then things go bump in the night. So that's where, from my company, one of the solutions we have, which I'll get to in a second, is called Stratosphere UX, and we manage, strike that, we monitor Windows desktops from a visibility. So any in-guest metrics, we monitor that stuff. So one of the reasons that we're partnering with Amazon is that they kind of forgot, as they're trying to roll this out, that desktops will go bump in the night. They'll have problems, they'll have, all kinds of things. It's not just a turn on and everybody's happy kind of thing. They forgot that you need to manage Windows desktops, which was kind of funny to hear that they forgot that, because it was one of those moments where like, yeah, I guess you're right. Again, with that visibility, in-guest visibility within the enterprise has never been more critical across all the enterprise. So what I want you to, and that's why I asked the question earlier about, are you even considering, or how are you managing desktops? And that's not me selling, that's just, if you had ever considered VDI, it's the same thing. It's the same challenges that's in the cloud, but hopefully you can avoid the same mistakes that people tend to make, right? And that's why I am partnering with Amazon and Workspaces is because of these visibility challenges, where now the customer is blaming Amazon that Workspaces isn't performing right. And Amazon's like, well, hold on a second. Like, we gave you the desktop and you broke it. So now it's a perception versus reality thing, where they're staring at each other for 3 months and the customers are mad, and now I'll get to that in a second, but it is just an interesting scenario. This is the one that just, when I drew this type of stuff on a napkin about 1.5 years ago with the head of PSO for, the head of ProServe for Amazon, and he just kept nodding his head and he was like, oh my God, he was having one of those moments where it was like he had just forgotten about physical and virtual desktops. He was just all cloud, 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 and it just forgot that there's a whole bunch of stuff that, like, well, I said to him, I go, well, how are you migrating their data from physical or virtual into cloud? And he just kind of stared at me going, actually his response first was, well, why do I care? Because we're just selling them workspaces. And I went, you better care, because they're going to care. And then it breaks, and then they don't have their stuff in the cloud. They're going to point at you, and he just said, ugh. So that was an interesting moment. Then this app, so as I alluded to earlier, I've been in applications my whole career. So then I asked him, well, how are you handling applications getting from physical, virtual to cloud? And again, he was kind of like, well, he brought up my app, he brought up some other stuff, but they've been kind of floundering on that concept for a little while. They have AppStream, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So these are definitely things that we need to consider as we're selling versus implementing workspaces. So this one, the solution architects and I laugh about this all the time, where the sales reps, is there any sales reps in here? Okay, all right, cool. So,
None of them are meant to anyway.
all right, so we've all been around sales reps that love to sell stuff and talk about stuff, and so what they had was a scenario where the sales reps were selling workspaces like it was the end-all be-all. This is going to work for everybody. And the solution architects would just cringe, because then the customers would use it. As I alluded to earlier, they would sell them a standard workspace, which is basically 4 gig of memory and I think a 20 or 30 gig drive, and maybe a dual core CPU, right? And they would install every developer app they had and blow the CPU and memory at 100, like, picture that world. 100% CPU, 100% memory pegged for 8 hours a day. You're literally not doing anything. The mouse is just not even moving at that point, because that's a Windows problem. So the solution architects and I were just kind of staring at each other going, yeah, this isn't really an implementation, this is a selling problem. So you have a selling problem and you have an implementation problem. So none of this means that Workspaces is bad. It's just, again, this is how VDI was, this is the life of VDI. These are all the design architecture type things that you had to go through. So if anything, this is going to keep us in, so everyone always says to me, well, yeah, the cloud is eliminating jobs. And I was like, quite the opposite. It's you just have to adapt with the times, and now you're managing it differently and in different locations, probably across the globe. So this last bullet is basically why cloud is actually probably going to add more jobs than people think, because you're going to have to manage twice as much in just different locations in the globe. You know, from your, I mean, I have friends that don't leave their house, but they're managing infrastructure in Singapore and Seattle and New York and just all over the place. I mean, this is, yeah, he and I are in the same boat. I don't leave my office, but I'm in India and UK, and I'm not dealing with APAC now. So it's really, really cool. Any questions on this?
I want to be cognizant of the time. We're going to have to be out here at 8 o'clock tonight.
Yep.
So.
You got it.
Just one quick question. So are you seeing people or organizations using workspaces almost as a jump box?
Yep.
More than anything else? Or
That,
in addition to some of those other roles that you had up on the slide?
I think from a POC perspective, yeah, there's a lot of interest to kick the tires in it, and people do use it as a jump box initially, and then they start expanding the use case.
Well, when you say jump box, do you mean a bash host, like into a VPC, or are you talking
Correct.
about?
Yeah, that's
So I would say no. Workspaces are like the farms of people's laptops up in the cloud.
Right.
They're not using their box as a jump host into a VPC. They'll have a bastion host with a bunch of user profiles in the VPC. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm changing my answer to what he just said, because jump box in my world is just an IT guy that has a Windows box that he uses as either a secure gateway to something else, or a DMZ type box to get into other stuff than firewall.
Right, that's kind of what I was referring to.
Okay, then it could be. Let's just go with
It
it.
sounds like both.
It could be.
The Workspaces VPC is totally different from your bastion host that you're jumping off into servers to.
Right.
You're not; those two are completely different environments.
Okay, yeah, because I saw that, yes, there, from the architecture slide, there are 2 VPCs.
Yeah.
There's one where the
You could do
workspace
that,
resides
but I
in.
wouldn't do that.
Okay,
I mean, you could use your laptop. I mean, we all do. We use our laptop as a jump host into our environments. But with that, you're adding another security group hole where you should just have a bastion host with a couple of user accounts on that. Not allow people within a security group in a Workspaces VPC access to your production VPC.
okay.
Actually, Amazon not recommending bastion hosts anymore. They in June or July
Yeah.
white papers for infrastructure as a code, they're recommending using system manager instead of it.
Is it, okay. Interesting, okay, thank you.
No worries. All right, so here's where it gets interesting. This is where the rubber meets the road. I'm not going to tell you the name, but this is a very large hardware reseller. They were in the and are in the process of purchasing 7,000 workspace instances. So right away, I can tell you right out of the gate, this is real. This is not just swipe a credit card. This is actual environments. This is enterprise. These are big, giant customers. So here's where it got interesting. The initial rollout halted, hard stop, which the minute you hear hard stop, that, you know, that's goofy. Performance issues. And I'll get into some of those, but just know that it was not good. It was, actually, you know what? That scenario I described about the standard desktop and the user just pegging the CPU to 100% and memory at 100% was this customer. So Amazon saying, well, I don't understand why they're having performance issues. Customer saying it's your fault, it's workspaces, it's a problem. And then we were brought in to basically find what was going on with the workspaces, and immediately with, you know, because we analyzed something like 2,000 endpoints and could tell, wow, you know, this, look at the, here it is, we're breaking it down, like, see this red, these two red bars, this means 100%, this desktop, 100% CPU, 100%, and then we can tell across a time. And they go, oh. So the basic, the concept was that you've just maxed out the resources of, you went to Best Buy, you bought a laptop, and the user maxed out their resources. It's basically the same thing, only this time you have a workaround. You can couple of mouse clicks and you can make this go away. So we were leveraged in real time to essentially identify where the pain points were and get them back on track, which I'm excited to say that we were able to do. I'm going to skim through this just so you know what I'm talking about. Visualize appliance on-prem or in AWS in their workspace EC2 instance, or their workspaces instance. And then a Windows endpoint with our SID key on it. Again, that's a collector ID key. And essentially we're collecting desktop and application user experience data and storing that on the appliance. And so we're collecting that data in real time across trends, typically 30 days, and that's how we were able to help in that scenario. This is what I was referring to earlier. So one of the things that we can do with Stratosphere is to do what I call, I'm naming it a tiering decision analysis, but if you visualize a bundle decision analysis, we can analyze their existing on-prem physical or VDI desktops, understand what horsepower they use and need on an X time basis, and then using this kind of report, basically tell them, hey, we've identified that 50 machines go in tier 1, 65 go in tier 2, and 130 go in tier 3, and those tiers will equal, I'm trying to be a little generic because there's other cloud vendors, but obviously this is very Amazon based. So those tiers equal bundle, and we're doing this in real time right now. This is pretty cool kinds of stuff that we're doing for Amazon. We're working a little bit with ProServe and the solution architects across customers. Case study 2, and this one was the most painful part of the call. Same customer, so imagine that. Same large hardware reseller, Amazon support. Cool moment for me was when he's using the Stratosphere UX data to then talk to the customer about what the fix is. And so the guy thought this was his mic drop moment. He said, he said, oh, well, because of your performance issues, we just need you to upgrade to a new tier, a new bundle. And right? And I'm cringing in the background because I knew it was about to happen. The customer then says, you have no idea what you just did to me, because now you've destroyed my profile, you've destroyed my user data and my applications. There's no way for me to go from bundle to bundle. Now you've caused me 3 days of downtime for this user, at which I unmuted. And because I wasn't, again, I'm not in sales, I unmuted and said, look, I don't want to make this weird, but we have a technology called Profile Unity that literally can harvest your profile and have it follow the user around in this portable container type entity from bundle to bundle, physical to virtual, it doesn't really matter. So that's the second way that we're partnering with Amazon if and when they encounter this event, is the ability to go back and forth between bundles. We can help them with that. And this was definitely one of those moments where the light bulb went off for some of the Amazon folks saying, wow, yeah, this is a problem. But they don't see it all the time. It's just when they do see it, it's a big deal. Does that make sense? Awesome.
Question about it.
Yeah.
So, is any requirements for the hardware that user are using to access its workspaces?
No.
So
Nope.
there's no any minimal requirements, so it can be any
Just use their app, right? Let's use their Workspaces app.
Yeah, it's literally just that application. And there was a time where Amazon was pushing the idea of a Chromebook or some sort of, device like that, but it really doesn't matter. It's wherever they want to access it from. They haven't really picked a player in the thin client realm. They're kind of all over the map at this point. So it's literally, they're just saying to customers, whatever you want to use.
Any recommendation for the speed of the network or something?
Faster the better, but I haven't really seen any performance issues in that capacity. The only time I had issues in my lab was because of, my wife and kids. I had one issue where it was my own house where they were streaming a movie and everything else was slow and my workspace was slow. But that's just 4-lane highway. Everybody's on the highway at the same time. That I don't blame the workspaces for that. So I would say I've never had a customer say, oh wow, the bandwidth from a client to workspaces is a problem.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Thank you.
Without so Profile Unity is the second thing that the second solution my company offers. If you just visualize this as the profile, and we also have something called a profile disk, so we can literally harvest the user's profile and have it follow the user across private enterprise or public cloud hosted, Amazon Workspaces, Citrix, VMware, it doesn't really matter to us. So we're pretty excited about that concept. This is where it gets interesting, because I still hold this title, but my role kind of shifted. I was the product marketing manager for a product called FlexApp that we offer, which is application layering. So now what you're going to see is large enterprise, and they have a footprint of applications, 9,000 applications that they wanted to move off of Citrix into AppStream. And one of the challenges about AppStream is so if you visualize what ThinApp is, you take an application, you install it into an image, and from that image, you're publishing the application out. And I love the concept. The execution is a bit goofy as you start stacking these images up, because when we were doing chaos math with this customer, it was going to take 3.5 years to get the applications from where they were into AppStream. And I'm surprised none of you kind of freaked out on that, because that's a long time to be installed. And that was just one. And then they had 3, they don't migrate across instances, like US East, 1, US West, and UK. So this customer had 3 data centers that they would be moving around in. That's a lot of years of reinstalling those applications. So where FlexApp, my application layering technology, came in is that we're able to essentially replace that application install during this scenario and attach those FlexApp layers without an install into the AppStream instance, which is really slick. So we're able to save a lot of time and help Amazon essentially sell AppStream and make it more efficient. So we're pretty excited about that. And blowing past this, if you visualize the OS as a puzzle piece, what we've done with FlexApp is basically just the application becomes essentially a puzzle piece that snaps onto the host operating system, right? Where it's not installed, it's not, so it's redirected into a VHD or a VMDK, and using our agent simply snaps into place on Windows.
When you say we, is that VMware or your current company?
Say that one more time.
Well, when you say we, is that VMware or
Yeah, Mike.
your current company?
Yep. You've probably heard of similar technology like this. So there's really 3 players in the application layering space. VMware has App Volumes, you've probably heard of. There is Citrix App Layering, and then there's FlexApp from my company. And without, tooting my own horn, we're definitely in the top of from a usability and a functionality perspective. So I'm pretty excited. So anyways, the traffic cop basically manages the communication between the Windows OS and the application itself. So the host operating system thinks they're natively installed, and that's my favorite part. The secondary part is that removing them, you're just unsnapping puzzle pieces. And so if you visualize that same scenario of physical, virtual, cloud, VMware, Citrix, it doesn't really matter. If we can, once we get it into a FlexApp layer, we can move that layer around and it follows the user. And it's not just marketing, we're actually doing this today, and ironically with Amazon as well. And Workspaces and AppStream, so we're pretty excited.
That's a big win for current companies that have their stuff on site and they want to start using Workspaces too. My 2 cents, because I use this.
Yep.
But if, sorry,
No problem.
one more question. If, for example, if zone application, for example, organization using its Office, why would they, will go this way, not using the Office and the clouds in Azure?
Yeah, Office is a goofy example because I've been a consultant my whole life, and I would rather have Office in the base image. So can I do Office? Yeah. Should you? No.
No, but why you will go with Amazon if it seems like more natural to go with Office and the clouds in Amazon? In
Azure,
Microsoft.
Azure 360.
Yeah.
Office 360.
Yeah, that's fine because Office 365 sits inside of Workspaces because Workspaces is just your desktop,
Right.
and Office 365 is in there. So it's not an Amazon versus Microsoft thing. It's just your desktop versus whatever you're going to use from an Office perspective. So it's Amazon just steps out of the way. They don't really care they don't really care necessarily what applications you use in there. They want to get you into Workspaces successfully, and products like this are geared to help you take what you have existing and get it into Workspaces and back and forth. Because that's the thing people forget, is it's not just an all or nothing thing. And I think Amazon forgot this too, is somebody's not just going to flip a switch and now they're all of a sudden cloudified, right? It's back and forth. It's Tuesday they're on physical, virtual, then Wednesday they're in cloud, and so there's a lot of back and forth, and that's where I realistically want to talk application strategy with customers to have a plan to get them there. So this is just part of the story.
So, any benefit using Workspaces versus Office 365 if I have only Office applications?
Again, you can't really compare the two because it's Office sitting inside of, so Workspaces become the desktop. It's like, I think to compare would be Office 365 versus Lotus Notes. You know, that's the comparison.
No, you know, Office 365 is just one application or a package of applications.
Right.
But if you just need that, then you don't need
Right.
Amazon desktop.
Okay.
But if you have 10 more,
Yeah.
then
It's more about what your thank you. It's more about what your desktop strategy is
All right.
and how the applications are going to be in there. So people aren't buying Workspaces because of applications necessarily. They're buying to get rid of their current desktop strategy or augment it, and then on top of that, you're adding the applications. And whether or not you go with Office 365 is kind of a coin flip. But
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah. That's,
So, the only thing I want you to remember from this one is this is my most exciting part, is the idea that these Flex App layers can literally be replicated across here and across regions.